Thank you for joining us. Welcome to 3 Minute Manna. It's good to see you. It is Friday, and on Fridays we talk about how the Lord's Church is different than all the other religious groups out there today. Pardon me for getting this video up a little bit later in the day, but thank you for joining us. I wanted to talk about different reasons that people follow Jesus. And we're going to start in John chapter 6. At John 6, at verse 26, Jesus tells the people, and this is after the feeding of the 5,000. He tells them, "Most assuredly I say to you, you seek me, not because you saw the signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled." He goes on to say, "Do not labor for the food that perishes, but for the food which endures to everlasting life." These people, they were treating Jesus like a meal ticket, is what they were doing. They were not interested in the true manna from heaven, right? He tells them they need to labor for the food that does not perish. You might think about what all of this, as Jesus was preparing them for what was going to come, I would suggest, in the church. And we know what 1 Corinthians 11 says. 1 Corinthians 11 says, "Don't you have houses to eat in?" Right? The idea is the church is the pillar of the truth. Right? A lot of people, they treat the church like a meal ticket, and only it's the wrong kind of meal. They're looking for that physical food. They need to be looking for the spiritual food. That's what the church holds up, the pillar of the truth. But also he says, "You seek me not because you saw the sign." And you might think about another passage, for example, in Luke chapter 23. In Luke chapter 23 at verse 8, it talks about Herod, and it said that Herod, as Jesus was on his way to the cross, that he was glad to see him because he had desired for a long time to see him, to see some sign, some miracle done by him. A lot of people, they follow Jesus just because they wanted to see some sign. And how many times did Jesus say it? An adulterous generation seeks after a sign, right? And that's why in the church, what do you see? Those miracles, there was a time for them, but in the church, as the church was established, that age was going to pass because the Lord wants us to walk by faith. And no further signs would be given. But a lot of folks follow Jesus just because they wanted to see a sign. But back in John 6 now, we know what's going to happen. In John chapter 6 at verse 60, after he was talking about his body and his blood, it says, "Therefore many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, 'This is a hard saying, who can understand it?'" A lot of folks followed Jesus as long as what he was teaching agreed with their thoughts. And a lot of people do the same thing today. A lot of people will follow the Lord as long as the Lord's doctrine does not condemn them, as long as he doesn't step on their toes. These folks, we know what's going to happen. They're going to leave. They're going to leave. Down in verse 66, they walk no more with him. Jesus says to the 12, "Do you also want to go away?" Simon Peter answers, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." A lot of folks, they will only follow the Lord as long as he's popular. They'll go to a church as long as it is a popular church. But if there's only a few people there, they're not going to go there. That's not a good reason. What we need to understand is exactly what Peter said. He has the words of life. The church is the pillar of the truth. Let all things be done for edification. That is what we seek. Hope you enjoyed this study today. We'll see you on Monday.